Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Respecting the Beer. I'm Decker, and we are all in our own hunkered down basements as the tornadoes ravage northeast Wisconsin. Gary is in his house, though we do believe he might be going after some houses in a land of Oz. With us today is Bobby.
So he's back on the far side of the moon today. Like it was, if this comes out in sequence, that's where he was last week.
Well, then we better time it up so that when this house falls, it's smashing a witch. We got Bobby here, the brewer of McFleshman's. Bobby, what's going on today?
What up? 2 beers in, waiting for Clint to arrive late. This was by design, I'm sure.
Yeah, he knew we'd be loosey goosey by the time that he showed up. So, Clint Lohman from Working Draft Brewery Working Draft Beer out of where are you guys out of? Madison,
Wisconsin. Yeah.
Right on, Clint. Well, welcome aboard, and tell us a little bit about your brewery.
Yeah, so we're a 7-barrel brewery on the near east side of Madison. Opened in 2018. Focus on a lot of European style lager, American style hoppy ales, and everything in between. So yeah, coming up on our 8th anniversary here.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Hey, what's
the actual official date, I think it was March 5th, but we bumped the anniversary party back to kind of end of April. I want to say it's April 24th.
It'll be a Friday.
Yeah, that whole weekend we're redoing an anniversary party just to get some nicer weather. It's kind of a bummer trying to celebrate that stuff when it's like gloomy end of winter, too early.
So we're basically twins then, because we opened in early May of 8 years ago. So
wow,
yeah,
all right, hell yeah,
right on.
2018.
The big push for European style beers in 2018. So what was what's the European beer that got you interested in diving into that style?
I would say the first European lager that got me, that really kind of like blew my mind, was Kronbacher. I was at a Madison Craft Brew Week event. Really hadn't drank a lot of European style lager. Had that at a booth, and it just was mind blowing. You know, it was just so different from the American pale lagers that I was used to drinking. And you know, being German beer, I think they've got things so tightly dialed into that even drinking craft lagers at that time really not even anywhere near the same. But I think, you know, American craft brewers are starting to catch up to that.
Did you do like the home brewing route? How did you get into get to be able to open an entire brewery?
Yeah, so I went straight from high school into the workforce. Found that to be pretty soul crushing pretty quickly. So, you know, my dad worked factory jobs my whole life, and I was just kind of like, cool, that's what I want to do. Wasn't really a huge fan of school, so I just went straight into that. And then, yeah, by the time I was like 19, 20, I was pretty well burnt out on working just soul crushing assembly line work type jobs. I was working in the printing industry, which also is not... it's pretty doom and gloom, as you can imagine. You know, print media isn't something with a bright future. So I decided I wanted to do something else, and I was always an adventurous beer drinker. Even when I was in high school, I would send my older sisters to the grocery store with a list of beers to find for me.
Which, if we could just take a super quick pause and say that is the most Wisconsin growing up story ever, of being like, well, actually, I refined my craft beer palate in my late teens in high school. Yeah, it's amazing.
Also, just like throwing my sisters under the bus right now. And
well,
minor, right? That's what older siblings are for.
Exactly.
So yeah, I would drive past Aleson on our way to work at the printing company, and then I just kind of got in my head like, well, that's manufacturing. I have some manufacturing experience, but that's doing something that is more exciting, I would care more about. So rather than do I started homebrewing as a hobby and then want to turn it a job, I kind of realized that's what I wanted to do for a job, and then started homebrewing as a means to learn more about that job in an effort to get that job. So I had a buddy who went to school at UW. He was already homebrewing, kind of showed me the ropes, and I was hooked from the first time I did it. Immediately went out, bought some equipment, got really into it. And then I was trying to get brewing jobs. So I'm trying to remember the sequence of events here. I started volunteering at a little brewery in Madison called House of Brews, since closed, but it was on the east side of Madison. Just helping him out with whatever he needed done. At the time, he was still doing build out, so I was like taping walls to be painted and just any odd job. I did that for like a year whenever I had some free time. Around that time, I also got a job at the Wine and Hop Shop, which is a homebrew store in town that has been around for forever. They actually are over 50 years old. They opened before homebrewing was even legal, which is interesting. So that was kind of my entrance into brewing. And then from the volunteer gig at House of Brews, I got connected with Scott Manning from Vintage Brewing Company. Came on to help him out. I think it was his first assistant brewer there.
Was House of Brews near Levi Funk's area where he had that little brewery?
Yeah, not exactly.
You know what I'm talking
No, it was Levi Funk's place is like down like south side, like off Park Street. That little the old Funk Factory building.
Okay.
This is more like east side off Stoughton Road.
Right.
But he kind of ended up serving
Got it.
Paige, the owner of House of Brews, that kind of ended up becoming like a brewery incubator. Like Mobcraft started out of there. I think Deadbird Milwaukee started out of there. So he sort of helped a lot of breweries get started.
Got it.
Yeah, so I went from there to
though.
Vintage, did that for 2 years, learned a ton with Scott. And then Wisconsin Brewing Company was opening in Verona. So we were all hearing this chatter about this big new brewery opening. Kirby Nelson was leaving Capital Brewing. That was a big deal. He was there for like 30 years. So it was very much like in everybody's minds that this was happening. And they did a couple of kind of pilot brews before they opened the brewery with a couple of brew pub friends around town. So they did some pilot brews with Great Dane, and then also did some with us at Vintage when I was working there. And I totally treated that brewing experience with Kirby and Mike McGuire as an interview. I was like, I got to put the old razzle dazzle on here. It's like try to get a job working for this brewery, and that worked. So I was able to kind of weasel my way in there. And then I worked with Kirby for 3.5 years at Wisconsin Brewing Company. And then kind of towards the tail end of that, some of my buddies from the Wine and Hop Shop told me they were looking at opening up a brewery. Initially, I was like, I got a stable job. I'm not really looking to jump ship. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, this might be my only opportunity to maybe be a part of something from like really the ground up. And so I changed my mind, talked to them. They luckily had somebody else in my head brewer, and that wasn't going to pan out. So they asked me if I wanted to come aboard. And then in those discussions was able to get some equity in the company as well. So that was is myself, Ryan Brown, who's no longer with Working Draft, but was one of our founding members, and then Ben Pfeiffer, who owns the Wine and Hop Shop. So Ben and I are still very actively involved in the business. And that's how I got to Working Draft.
Right on. What a journey.
Kirby has to be, you mentioned Kirby. We got to get Kirby on here at some point. What is he as knowledgeable? I've had beers with him, but I've had 3.5 years brewing with him. So I assume he was as knowledgeable after all those years as when he seems to be over.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's so many like Kirbyisms and just like stories. I mean, I very much view Kirby as like I would say the most foundational mentor. I've had a couple of them, right? But I think that Kirby is I mean, Kirby and I are very close. Kirby officiated my wedding. So like he's almost like family to me at this point. But yeah, he had a huge influence on me, especially with lager brewing and just kind of how I approach recipe writing and things like that. A lot of that came from Kirby.
I close my eyes and I don't know why I see Steve Dressler when I think about Kirby Nelson of Sierra Nevada. So he was Ken Grossman's number one, number two, whatever we call it. I don't know how much that played into his personality, but for some reason it makes me think.
Yeah,
of that
just
when
like a couple of
Kirby.
Eccentric hippie guys from that era.
Yep.
Yeah, Kirby is a character. You guys should absolutely have him on the podcast. He's very entertaining.
I don't know why I haven't thought of that till just now, but I just circled it.
Make that a priority. He'll do it for sure.
Awesome. All right, tell us about how things have been going. How you got started over at Working Draft? How that process went.
When we started the brewery, I knew that I basically started with like I wanted to make a juicy IPA, like more piney West Coast IPA, a double IPA that was a combination of the two. I think we talked about making a pale ale and then a German Pilsner. So those are like the main things that we were I think that's what we were going to start with. So actually, the first beers we brewed on our system, on our 7-barrel system, was the German Pilsner. It's our first big commercial brewer there. And obviously, like that didn't entirely pan out around that time. Also, hazy IPAs were just sort of becoming a thing around here. It was still like a thing that when I was at Wisconsin Brewing Company that we were like, is this really going to become a thing? But by the time we got rolling on Working Draft, it's obvious that was like going to be a thing that was going to stick around. So of those first 4 or 5 beers that we brewed, the only 2 that have really, or 3 that have stayed are the double IPA hasn't changed much. The juicy IPA became hazy IPA, so that's pulp culture. That's our flagship beer. And then the German Pils is hindsight, that's seasonal. But that was the German Pils was kind of like the starting point of really ramping up that lager production and exploring those styles, which I think has become a thing we're known for in Madison now. And definitely the thing that I'm the most interested in exploring and learning about. Not that I don't love our IPAs, but the lagers are it's been fun taking a deep dive on.
What is
Who built your system?
It's a Sprigman system. The other, yeah.
Wow.
The original Sprigman. Yeah.
what makes lager beer so exciting for you? Because when you hear about lager, it's like just an outsider, not a brewer, just a guy that likes to drink beer. You think of lager beers kind of boring, they're, straightforward, they're beer flavored beers, but what is it? Because that isn't true. There's so many different depths of everything, but what is like so exciting about being able to find like a different way of doing a German Pilsner and a Czech Pilsner and like all the things in between?
I think it's just like how technical and nuanced it is really what draws me to it. And again, like the thing that really drove me in learning that stuff was how different the German and Czech examples were to a lot of the US examples. And it was just this mystery of like, why is this? What are they doing different? And why is it so unique to this area that seems to be so hard to replicate in the United States? And I think that challenge is what really got me excited and made me want to dive deeper into it. It's like, how do I make beers that taste like they were brewed in Germany or brewed in the Czech Republic? Which is still like an evolving journey, right? I feel like we get better and better at all the time, but I wouldn't say I'm nailing it, So it's just been I think for me a very attractive thing because it's just such a challenge, and it's taken so much.
And that's what inspired this interview. We were at a beer fest in Madison, I think in January. It was the big one at the Lions Center or whatever, and I think we talked 30 minutes on Czech lager, Czech Pilsner at that time. I was like, oh my God, with the deep dive here, let's just pause and let's just have this on the podcast because we were getting into it. It is interesting. Like you're talking about these Pilsners and like what could be different, but turns out the deeper you go into it, it's just, you cover all the bases, whether it's the water chemistry, the hops and malt and the whole process and the equipment and just all the brewers' fingerprints. There's so much to it. I'm with you. We were talking about foam for half that 30 minutes.
The eternal quest for perfect foam is like, I feel like a battle I'm never going to win, but you just try to get better all the time. But I think it's also, what I love about lager brewing is that it isn't really, for the most part, a recipe thing. Like the recipes for most of these beers are super, and actually I think this is true across like almost all European beers. A lot of classic beer styles, those recipes are simple, and that makes sense if you think about it. Like when these recipes were invented, they didn't have access to homebrew shops or like with a catalog of like 100 different malts. They had 1 or 2 things to work with, 2 if they're lucky, right? So a lot of those beers it's the simplicity of the recipe, but then there's so much complexity in the process and how you get to that finished product. And there's so many like mysteries in those details. And I feel like I'm a detective all the time. Like I'll watch a podcast or listen to a podcast or watch an interview with a German or Czech brewer and try to pick up on these little things they're saying. Like, what did they mean by that? Could I apply that this way? And it's piecing these like million little pieces together to try to recreate this thing that is incredibly difficult to recreate.
And they're not cagey about it.
Yeah.
They just don't think to mention it. And you tease it out of the interview. Like, wait, back up.
Yeah.
What did you just say? That was off the cuff there. I heard a Czech lager maker talk about using flake barley. And like, what?
Yeah.
Whoa, back up. He's like, oh yeah, our foam stands like twice as long with them. Like, oh my God. There's just so many these things that just pop up in an organic
Yeah, and you're right. Like they're
conversation.
not trying to hide it. It's just that's the way that they've brewed for forever, so they don't think it's significant. But every little detail is significant.
Decker, where do you put the music analogy? I was going to put one together, but you're the music guy. When I'm thinking about lager brewing or hazy IPA brewing, you're like, there has to be, just two extremes.
I mean, like lager brewing is to me it'd be like your like your classic rock song. That's like hearing. We've all heard Black Dog by Led Zeppelin 1.5 million times, and like, it's a great riff. It's a great overall song, but at the like base of it, it's like a guitar, a bass, drums, and a singer. And then if you look at like a hazy IPA, and then you've got all the different hops combination and thing, and you can look at like a band like I guess we could say. Now you put me on the spot and I'm messing up.
we're picking on We're picking on
no,
hazy
but
IPA.
it's
I
easy
don't mean
to like
but
because you get all the flavors and the layers and the texture off of like the different hop and things. So I mean, you could look at like a band like Mastodon that brings in a whole bunch of different sounds into their song. It's still 5 people that are making the music, but it sounds way more complex because everything's layered. But is Oblivion a better song than Black Dog? They're both riffs. They're both, a singer, a riff, drums, bass, and everything. But if like what you said with like a Pilsner, and you dive into it, this is something that I think me personally, I'm working on is trying to be intentional on things, and so you're like looking for that little subtlety, that difference, that like, oh, I am hearing that like the pre-reverb of the song when I'm listening to it on this classic thing. I hear the sound of the pick hitting the string before the string makes a note. That's like seeing like, oh, they put flake barley in it, and that's why that's up. Or they put in, X amount of this hop at 30 minutes instead of at 20 minutes or whatever. Like that's the type of complexities that like we take for granted, I guess, because you're just embracing it. But you can get lost in the sauce about basically anything.
Music analogies come up a lot on the podcast, and now that we have Decker hosting, Decker's
local radio DJ. So yeah.
Anyway, so I'm with you, man. Like when it's those little things that make those lagers just really interesting, especially when they're.
Well, I think like making beers that are simple and really drinkable, but yet complex is like always the goal, right? But that's not always the stuff that is the most popular. If you look at the highest rated beers out there, it's always something big and loud and kind of messy, right? But I always joke that if you want a high Untapped rating, don't make lager because it just brings the curve down,
No.
Yeah.
Don't make a Hellas,
Unless all you do is
try.
lager, then it's cool,
But
right?
make
But if you do both,
right, if you're beer side or cohesion,
What is something that
100%.
when you've been like diving into the like, complexities, the simple complexities of a lager, that was kind of like a light bulb moment that changed you said your German Pilsner, that was the first one that you brewed and it wasn't quite that awesome. That wasn't big of a hit. What's something that you've discovered since that came out that is like kind of rejuvenated that one?
Oh, I mean, there's like a million things.
Pick one then.
I would say, the thing that I think is surprising when I talk to other brewers that I've found to be one of the most impactful things we've done is really focusing on getting clean wort in the fermenter. So you have your hops and your protein stuff that kind of coagulate and form in the boil kettle, and you carry that stuff over to the fermenter, and that cooked vegetal hop material is really bitter, and as it sits in the beer and the beer becomes alcoholic, that alcohol acts like a solvent and starts to pull some of those harsh bitter flavors out of the beer. But if you can find clever ways to remove that stuff, it has a huge impact on the finishing of a beer that's otherwise pretty simple, right? So a little bit of harshness is going to really stand out in a Pilsner. So getting our whirlpool figured out, our whirlpool process, so we have efficient settling in the whirlpool. We then pump over, and the next day drain the cone to get any hops that might have settled on the fermenter. And then also all of our fermenters have top manways, so we can open them up and skim the hops that rise up in fermentation and form in the foam of the beer. You skim that stuff out. And if you skim that stuff and taste it, it's almost like licking a thing of hop extract. It's like so intensely bitter. Mm-hmm. And it makes you realize, yeah, this stuff in the beer is going to have a flavor impact. And so,
yeah, that you made me brave enough to shave the cone. We call it shaving the cone the next day. Yeah. Like after we knock out. I wasn't brave enough till I talked to you.
Yes,
now
have you noticed a difference?
On all the lagers. So yeah, we're starting to. It's now been about 6 or 8 weeks since we started doing it, and then we're starting to see it come out down the pipe. Yeah, I'm actually drinking one right now, and it's awesome. It is really soft. And now I'm thinking, well, I want to put some more hops now in the kettle, because that gives me what I'm looking for.
It's like more bitterness, but a better, smoother bitterness, right? And that's some of the magic too. And really, I came by that by, like what I was talking about, like just finding clues, like watching videos of, there's like a great video of a little brewery in Germany called Adlerbrow. They have like a kind of almost like a local German network did a special on a brew day with them. And I learned a lot from them, because that brewery, they would go from the brew house into a cool chip and then go into an open fermenter that they would pitch yeast in, and then transfer it out of that open fermenter into another open fermenter the next day. Yes. And then transfer out of that open fermenter into the conditioning tank. And it's like all those steps were designed to clean that beer up every step of the way. Now that's like a very old way to do it, but every brewery's different.
Yeah, and we do open fermented English ales as well. And so after about 3 days under an open fermenter foam cap, we're going to transfer out from under that and off of whatever drops to the bottom. So in the process, we've been doing this and not thinking about it. I mean, it sounds like we're just doing like secondary fermentation, but it's very different in an open fermenter.
Well, Adlerbrow is, that's crazy. You said that. That's the brewery that was in the Stone Arch building back in the early...
I know there's like a Wisconsin version.
Yeah.
Not the same business, I'm pretty sure. But
I thought about that when you said
yours
that.
perked up.
Yeah. There's a couple in Germany as well, but yeah, I mean that's just one example. I mean, then like dialing pH and boil times and the way you boil, and we've like messed around with recirculating while we're boiling, and there's just like so many variables in beer.
And yours, you have a steam boiler, right? If I recall, and it's just it's 15 psi or 12 or whatever psi. So yeah, you guys you're brewing in a way we are. That's how we brew on a what do you call it, atmospheric boiler.
And your guys' system is like a Czech-made system, right?
That's right. Yep. So yeah, they don't have a word for decoction. That's just how you brew. So everything. I mean, not everything, but we do a lot of decoction.
That's awesome. We're starting to do more actually, and actually our kind of flagship Czech Pilsner is now going to be decocted. Moving forward, our system is.
You gonna do it twice?
Wait, I don't
do a double.
No,
do a double on
but
that?
I do like a big temperature jump so that my decoction portion is a substantial chunk of the mash, and then do a pretty long boil on it. So it works out. It's pretty. It's making a difference in the beer for sure. We actually have two tanks filled with it, but we haven't filtered any, so we're not at the end product of that yet. So.
Oh, and you're doing all plate and frame filtration on all your lagers? Okay. Yeah, I've gone back and forth over the years. We have a plate and frame filter, and then we have lagering tanks too. So I'll go back and forth. And these days I'm back in team lager tanks and time. But it's just one of those, I don't know who's right here, because it is magical to see all that bright beer coming out the other side of that filter.
Like scrubbing a floor and watching it come clean. You're like, look at that. We can see my work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of filtering our beer. It's a lot of extra work, and set up at filter days, it's like that's what you're doing that day. And there's some extra beer loss and stuff. But I just think the beers, when they are not filtered and when they are filtered, to me, it's like they come into focus a little bit more. When you got that yeast in suspension, there is this kind of blanket of yeasty character over the beer that sort of dampens or mutes some of the hop or malt character in a way that isn't unpleasant, right? It's like bready and a pleasant flavor, but it just covers up some of the nuances of the malt and the hops or like the fermentation profile.
Yeah, and the lager people, the long lager people, talk about the activity of the yeast, so the scrubbing and the evolution and just the overall oxygen stability to have that yeast in the tank down in the lager vessel for however long it sits. I think Sierra Nevada really prescribes to that on their lagers. I think a lot of them are sitting in some sort of lagering vessels for a certain period of time. And Sierra Nevada has always been a big fan of doing can and bottle conditioning too for similar reasons. But yeah, I don't know.
I know.
There's so many
One,
ways
to be
skin
fair, like,
cat.
our lagers are still taking 6 to 8 weeks. We're giving them a pretty ample lager period before we're filtering them. We're not really using filtering as like a
Yep.
shortcut for settling things out as much as just a finishing, polishing touch on a beer that we'd probably feel comfortable pulling out of the fermenter and packaging unfiltered, but it does change the character of the beer when you filter it.
Brightens it up. And you do have you're fermenting in
We don't have any
tanks?
horizontal tanks. That one is one of the methods that I'm not as sold on. I've heard a couple brewers that use them say that they think it's maybe one of the less impactful things in terms of like what makes a beer taste more traditional and traditional processes. But I don't know. I've never used them myself, so it's all anecdotal for me.
I do think the geometry plays a role here. We're talking about a lot of it's just about how far the yeast has to settle. That's why we go in those tanks. And then when you look at the tank next to it, which is only like twice as tall or whatever, there's not much advantage there. But when you're talking about tanks that are 4 or 5 or 6 times as tall, then you start to understand why.
In a large brewery, totally.
that in
It
a
makes a ton of
secondary.
sense. You've seen like, if you've ever seen like pictures of like in Budvar, they have one humongous lagering tank that's probably like, I don't even know, like maybe 1,000 hectoliters or something like that. And it's like that in a batch size that large, that makes sense. That distance is a huge game changer.
Yep. It's 250,000 pints to my estimate. I think that's what that number comes to.
Beyond the Pilsner, what other styles of lager are you exploring?
I mean, I have a hard time naming beer styles we haven't brewed at this point. We've done so many different beers, but we have 4 kind of core Czech lagers that we brew. One of them is year round, the other 3 are seasonal. But so we'll do our Czech Pilsner, which is our 12 Plato Czech Pale Lager. We do 10 Snack is our 10 Plato Czech Pale Lager, and then we do a Czech Amber Lager and a Czech Dark Lager as well. So those beers all get brewed every year. But then, we have Czech Fest coming up the weekend of June 5th, which
I'm going to try to get you our Czech Pilsner. I just now realized I didn't respond to that.
From you. Yeah. But we put 16 different Czech style beers, all poured on liquor faucets for that weekend, and usually about half of them are ours. So we have those core 4, but then I'm always sprinkling other stuff along the way or throughout the year that I'll kind of sit on. We have a 1-barrel pilot system as well, so I have a lot of room to explore and make some other kind of wonky stuff.
You have the same brewery. We have a 7-barrel system. We have a 1-barrel system. We do plate and frame filtration. Yeah, it's crazy. We're masochistic at the same time.
Always, if it makes the beer better, I'll sacrifice myself for it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why people like going to breweries, is because it's the artist, the brewer is willing to try something that you're like, we never had before. I think that's why like the hazy IPA thing blew up, is because like, wow, I've spent my entire life looking at beer that's crystal clear or pitch black, and there's never anything in between. And now all of a sudden I've got beer that's, orange and yellow or hazy. I can't see through it. It's thick as orange juice type of thing. And now people are, you're finding other ways to make people excited about a fermented beverage.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think like some of the lager brewing too is also just people's drinking habits changing, and they tend to be moderate ABV, and I think everybody's kind of coming full circle and come back around to the classics. And I'm here for it.
So we've been saying it's a year of the lager for what, 12 years now?
I don't know. I mean,
Finally a year,
it's not
right?
a year, right?
Right?
That's like, let's have it be a decade or more.
Exactly. And also, it's never gone away. It's always been the top selling style. If you look at the overall market. Deck,
I saw it on your Facebook page. You had a smoked rice lager that you tapped in back wild rice. Yeah.
Wild rice lager.
Yeah, tell me, because I've had a rice lager before, but what makes using the wild rice different from, I guess, or even the smoke? Like, what's making it different?
So wild rice beers is something that I learned from Kirby. He made one at Capitol, and then we made some on the pilot system, I think, when I was at Wisconsin Brewing Company, and that was a pretty mind-blowing experience. Wild rice is so different from regular rice, or like a white rice or jasmine rice or whatever you might use to make your standard rice lager. It has a very distinctive nutty, fruity flavor, like almost like to me, it tastes like blueberry, or other people describe it as tasting like cotton candy. And it's not it's a pretty pronounced flavor. So yeah, I don't consider it even if you're trying to make a rice lager and you want to eat, and you're like, I could sub in wild rice. Don't do that. That's not getting the same thing. So and it seems to really pop out more in lager beer. So I've made a couple of wild rice lagers, and this idea actually came from, we like to use the pilot brewing system as a kind of fundraising tool for charities. So we will donate a private brew day and an auction where the proceeds go to charity, where somebody gets to come in, design a beer with me, and brew on the pilot system. So this beer is actually born out of one of those. Somebody had won one of those packages, and then we kind of got to talking about what we wanted to do. And he was kind of throwing a lot of stuff out there. And then in the midst of that, I started piecing together he wants something that's a little bit crazy. Well, wild rice is fun. And then the smoke idea came into my head, and I was like, well, smoke. I've never done a smoked wild rice beer. That could be cool. And then the thought was to use cherrywood smoke or cherrywood smoked malt, because that cherrywood smoked malt is like a fruitier, smoky character. And that plays really well with that blueberry note in the wild rice. So as smoked lagers go, it's a pretty subtle smoke. It's only 10% of the grist, which is pretty low for smoked malt. So it's a subtle smokiness that sometimes you can't really even pick out if is it smoke or is that sulfur? It can be hard to tell because the smoke is not super pronounced. But that fruitiness from the smoke does blend with the fruitiness from the wild rice in a way that is just really interesting and unique. And I think it's a fun showcase of maybe making lager beer in a way that isn't as traditional, but still isn't taking a step into using crazy adjuncts. It's still something that is generally, you can consider a kind of traditional ingredient, and getting a pretty out there and unique result in a pale lager package that is drinkable and refreshing.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out if I guess I'm a home brewer. I've only done a few batches. I'm not a super, brewer or anything, but I was trying to figure out how much percentage do you use of that wild rice in your grist to, I guess what are the percentages? What are you using beyond just the wild rice?
So that beer specifically, I think, is just Pilsner malt, cherrywood smoked malt, and wild rice. The wild rice, I think, is 10 to 15%. And then 10% smoked malt, and then the rest is kind of our house Pilsner malt that we use for most things.
It's raw.
Yeah, that's the tricky part about it.
Raw.
You have to cereal mash it. And the thing I've learned through the years is that it likes to absorb a lot of water. So when we cereal mash, the liquid to grist ratio we have to use to make sure it doesn't start sticking, can pump around nicely, is 7-to-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Bobby can tell you, is very, very, very thin for any sort of mash.
3 times.
But it sucks all that moisture up and turns into a mush if you don't go that thin with it. So you have to cereal mash it, which is in itself, a whole process, some extra stuff.
Well, explain that a little bit. How
So
do you
what we
your
do
cereal
is
mash?
we actually will mill the rice. I find that it does hydrate better if you can kind of crack it open, which is tough because that stuff is like so hard when it's raw like that. It actually looks
Yeah.
like black sand when you mill it. It looks like it's made of glass or like silica.
I heard a brewer tell it or say a trick on another podcast where you mix that with some
Yeah.
malt, like 50-50 as you run it through the mill. I didn't know why, but do you know why? they
Mixing it
said
with
to do that?
malt.
So,
We actually run it. We have a little homebrew mill that we use, so we run through that because it's the,
Oh, okay,
the grains are also long and skinny, so you need a really tight mill gap, like a mill gap that would be way too tight
Yeah.
for barley. You would just create flour.
Yeah.
So you'd have
Yeah.
to either adjust your mill
Fair.
gap, and honestly, like it's hard enough that if I'm going to destroy a mill, I'd rather destroy the homebrew mill and not our big expensive
Fair
mill.
enough.
So that's part of why I run through the homebrew mill as well.
yeah.
But basically,
Yep.
we'll mash that in separately from the main mash with a little bit of barley in there as well, so you get some enzyme action. Run it through your kind of normal mash steps, beta amylase, alpha amylase. Get it up to 180. That's about when the starch gelatinizes, which is the whole purpose. Yeah.
About 85, 90
And then we'll actually
85
boil it
C,
for
yeah.
about 20 minutes because if you've ever made wild rice at home, you know that. Usually they're like, you got to boil it for an hour for it to be done, you know? So it takes some boiling to
Yeah.
kind of break things up. And then we just pump it into the main mash and then use that as a kind of like a decoction, a temperature step up to ramp up to a different step in the main
Right.
mash.
And then once you've gone through the gelatinization of it, then that recombines with your main mash,
Yep,
and those enzymes
exactly.
take it from there.
Yep.
They break it down. Yeah. And I was told by Charlie Bamforth how gelatinization works is like that extension cord that someone messes, it just completely wadded up in the back of your truck. He's like, you got the gelatinization process is just uncoiling
That's
that
a great
cord,
analogy.
and then let your enzymes go at it from there.
Yeah, you can't use the extension cord if it's all balled up, right?
You're right.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
All right,
Charlie's
Clint.
awesome.
Well, we've loved having you on this on the podcast, talking about all things lager and working draft beer down in Madison. Beautiful tap room. Before we go, there's something that we've been doing with our guests. Gary started it, I believe, so we will continue it. But let's say you've been obviously wrongly convicted of a crime that carries a capital punishment, and you are on death row, and you now have a death row beer flight. What is your the last? How many are on a flight at your place? 5, 4?
4.
4. Okay, so what are your final 4 beers on your death row?
Pilsner Kel, for sure. I would say that's my desert island beer.
Let me ask, are you down
Yeah.
for it having a hint of butter?
I like it. It's a
I'm-
feature,
I'm
not a
with
flaw.
you.
Yeah, I like
I'm
it.
with you. Yep.
That's the nerdiest thing I think we've said in this podcast, by the way.
And then I think I'd have to probably go German Pils. Maybe do like Eyinger or Bitburger Pilsner. And then maybe Schlenkerla Helles. And we'll finish it out with Ondeck Stapelbach.
Wow.
That I've not had, but I know enough about the brewery.
It's
and
very
that's my
good. You can
favorite
actually get it
style,
here.
so,
Like Woodman's usually carries it. It's a great beer.
yeah. I'm gonna seek
Love a good
that one out.
doppelbock. Tastes like raisin bread.
Yep.
All right, before we close up though, speaking of lagers, can we find you at our West Coast IPA
We're
Festival?
mulling it over. I got to
Coming
think
up.
about the family schedule, and that's one
Yeah.
where because we're so focused on kind of our home market. When I pitch these like Fox Valley things
Yeah.
to people, everyone's like, "If you're gonna do it, you can go. If you got time to do it, you can go. I'm not gonna help
Yeah.
you do it. We don't
Yeah.
sell beer."
I got you. No pressure. No pressure. We're gonna try to grow this each year. It's sort of an invitation. We're trying to be the best representation of the style that we can be here in Wisconsin. So we're inviting all the brewers that have them. A lot of them have been responding, say, "Oh, I got some hazies. Can I bring those instead?" No. Did you not read the
When is
title of
this?
the-
This is the first I've heard of
No.
this.
Oh, yeah, it's the first anyone has heard because I know this won't air.
Well, thank
until
God.
it's been announced. We're
Nice.
announcing it on 420, and yeah, the price is going to be $54.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with $69.
$547. Well, no, it's our $547 day evolved into
Right
an
on. Okay,
invitational.
well, I look forward to being there for that.
Well,
as
if I can swing it, man, I definitely want to. It's just juggling the circus,
Yeah, I get it. No apologies.
Well, I
the
appreciate
invitation's
you guys
always
inviting
open.
me.
That's going to wrap up this episode of Respecting the Beer. The show is produced by David Kelso with music by Sarah Lynn Huss. Be sure to join the Facebook group to connect between episodes and support the show over on Patreon, where you can get uncut episodes, access to specially brewed beer, and more. Until next time, please remember to respect the beer.